Morning. Tomorrow night is Rosh Hashanah. Maybe you're watching this a little later and maybe it's already past that, but as is right now, as I'm filming this, and I'm going to upload it right away, tomorrow night is Rosh Hashanah. And there's something that seems to be ubiquitous all throughout, not only Rosh Hashanah itself, most people who celebrate Rosh Hashanah are aware of, but then all throughout the whole season of all of these holidays, is honey. Now, traditionally, most of the time, according to the understanding of our sages, when the Bible just mentions honey by itself, doesn't mean bee honey. I mean, when the Bible specifies bee honey, like we see with the story of Samson and the lion in the book of Judges, then we're talking about bee honey. Generally, like when it says a land flowing with milk and honey, it's understood to be actually date honey, more or less the syrup of the dates, from the date trees. Now, this guy's not speeding up, he's in the left lane, so I don't know what to do, so I'm just going to go in front of him. The idea of land flowing milk and honey, incidentally, the sages say, was goat milk and date honey. And they said it actually happened that because the goats were so full of milk, they would just squirt out milk, and the dates were so plump they would just burst, and that there was actually pools of milk and honey in the Holy Land in ancient times. And that also demonstrates how people say, oh look, the desert's blooming. They're really, selling out for much less than what will be when Messiah comes, and really the whole world will be developed into something holy like that. But let's put that aside. Most of us use bee honey to dip the challah, dip the apple on Rosh Hashanah, dip the challah all throughout this season. The bread we dip in honey. The Ben Ish Chai also, we should note, he says you should use white sugar. He has Kabbalistic reasons for that. But still, as we said, we use bee honey. Bee honey is a fascinating product because it's one of the few products I can think of, perhaps one of the only products, that is a kosher product that comes from a non-kosher animal. Meaning, if you would milk a pig, the milk is not kosher. You milk a horse, a dolphin, I don't know, whatever you're going to milk, a dog, the milk is not kosher. You have eggs from a vulture or a turtle or whatever. Anything's not kosher, it's not kosher. Eggs have to come from a kosher bird. Milk has to come from a kosher mammal. Or eggs could be from a kosher fish, but from a non-kosher fish, the eggs are not kosher, and so forth. And yet, here we have such a thing. The bee is not a kosher animal. And yet we eat the honey from the bee. And how could that be kosher? Now, the halachic answer is that the bee does not produce the honey, although it does add enzymes to it and so forth, so there could be a question about that, but essentially the bee is not producing honey. The bee is merely transferring the nectar from the flowers to its beehive, although, like we said, it does add certain enzymes and certain things, but still it's considered kosher because it's not a product of the bee, but rather an item that the bee transfers. However, still, essentially, it's a kosher product that comes from a non-kosher animal. So Rabbi Nosson of Nemirov, who was famous, he was a student of Reb Nachman of Breslov. And he wrote, of course, just about everything we have from Reb Nachman of Breslov comes from his Reb Nosson. But in addition to that, he composed his own Svarim, an encyclopedic work called Likutei Halachos, a collection of laws, where he comments on the Shulchan Aruch in a Hasidic style. And it's quite an interesting and uplifting book, where he discusses the laws in the Shulchan Aruch and explains them, as we said, gives, spiritual Hasidic interpretations of these laws. I personally don't have this sefer, but every time I had opportunity to learn a little bit from it, which I haven't really learned that much from it, I've always found it to be quite an enjoyable experience to study this sefer, Likutei Halachos, from Reb Nosson of Nemirov. So Reb Nosson there, he discusses not only laws but also customs. So he discusses this custom of dipping the apple in the honey and dipping challah in the honey during Rosh Hashanah and the whole month of Tishrei, essentially, all the holidays in the month of Tishrei. Some even continue to do so on the Shabbos after Shabbos Bereishis. They continue to do so. Especially when it's this year, when Shabbos goes right into, Yom Tov goes right into Shabbos. So what's the significance of the honey is, once again, you have a non-kosher animal producing a kosher item. And so Reb Nosson says that could give us chizik, that could inspire us. Why? Because that means that it doesn't matter what you've done all year, even if you're a non-kosher animal, even you're a stinging animal, even you're a self-destructive animal, because when a bee stings, it's a self-destructive act. He winds up harming not only harming the other person, but killing himself. Right? Because the stinger, except for the queen bee has a straight, smooth stinger that just pierces and comes right out. The other bees, their stinger is serrated and it's jagged and it gets stuck, and then it can't get out. So when the bee draws out, it loses the stinger and it dies, because it cuts off the back of its body. It not cuts it off, it breaks it off. So the significance that we have here, therefore, is that even if you are not kosher, like the bee is not kosher, even if you've hurt others, like the bee hurts others, even if you're self-destructive, which generally is what happens when you're hurting others, you can repent and turn around to something sweet and nutritious with the preservative power, the antibacterial power, which is what the bee honey has. Bee honey is an amazing thing. It preserves things, and it also is antibacterial, meaning bee honey from 2,000 years ago is just as fresh and edible as any bee honey. It never goes bad. But not only that, but it has a prominent place on the table as we celebrate the new year. That's an amazing thing. Think about it. If you contemplate the significance of the honey on Rosh Hashanah, you could turn your whole life around. So it seems like just a simple thing. We dip the apple in the honey for wishing for a sweet new year, but it's deeper than that. There's a tremendous significance that we can contemplate. By this we also learn that Judaism is a very mature religion. There's a lot of folks, their whole Jewish education, if they even get that, is a Sunday school, Hebrew school, by usually parents who teach the Hebrew school don't know that much themselves. Maybe they know how to read Hebrew a little bit, and that's what qualifies them. So now they even have teenagers teaching the Hebrew school. People who are totally unqualified, who don't know anything, but they know how to read Hebrew, and that's what they're able to teach, which is a wonderful thing, because everybody, you all have to do something. Everybody should be a teacher. Everybody should be, adding something to somebody. But alright, so you have these basic mechanics, teaching Hebrew, a little bit holidays and stuff, and maybe a few Bible stories. But that's what they call a Hebrew school. And then you get a little older, and you think, well, this is a childish religion, because all you grew up with was a childish approach to Judaism. On the other hand, if you have an authentic yeshiva education, you go learn every day. You learn the depth and beauty of Judaism. You learn what your heritage is that's been robbed from you by a society that sought to uproot our faith. At history of how there's been time and time again, everybody was sure Judaism would be finished, and yet we rise back out of the ashes. Talk about that in another video. Thank you for watching. God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe. Think about these things. I know I talk slowly. It's because you need to take time to think. Think about what you're discussing. Think about what life is all about. Try to prepare a little better in the future. I'm tired too. I don't want to waste time. Alright, God bless you. Please like, share, and subscribe, and comment. Take time to study. Take time to learn more. Again, you have to understand, what does this mean also, a Hasidic teaching like this? It's not to say that this is pshat. This is not necessarily the simple meaning. But you find a beauty and a depth behind what our sages teach, and that's what I'm talking about. It's not to say that it's necessarily that's what was in mind when these things came about, but it's also just as much true to say that it's not so. Meaning there's a little bit of both. All right. Alright, thank you for watching. God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe, and comment, and let's continue the discussion.